Welcome to Women's Leadership Success Podcast, episode number 144. I'm your host, Sabrina Brahm. In today's episode, we're diving into the powerful concept of flexible leadership with one of the leading thinkers in the leadership space, Kevin Eikenberry. Kevin is the author of over 20 books, including his latest, Flexible Leadership, Navigating Uncertainty and Leading with Confidence. As the founder of the Kevin Eikenberry Group, he's advised leaders at organizations worldwide and created transformative leadership programs like the Remarkable Masterclass. In part one of our conversation, Kevin shares insights on developing the flexible leadership mindset that's crucial for women leaders in today's rapidly changing business landscape. Get ready for practical wisdom that will transform how you approach leadership challenges.
Welcome to Women's Leadership Podcast, showing you how to influence people, improve your performance, and advance your career. Brought to you by women's leadership and career expert Sabrina Brahm and womensleadershipsuccess.com. Here's your chance to meet women trendsetters leading the way to success, accomplishment, and balance in business and life. No matter if you're a manager, CEO, or entrepreneur, join Sabrina for coaching and no-nonsense advice to improve your career and bottom line.
This is Women's Leadership Success, and I'm so excited to be here today with Kevin Eikenberry, who is a thought leader in the whole field of leadership and one of the people I admire most in life. And I want to start out by asking you, how many books do you have out, Kevin?
Author, co-author, contributing author. It's like 20.
20 books.
It's not all me, but yeah.
You've got 20 books. You've got all kinds of leadership programs, the Remarkable Masterclass. You have lots of things. Your newsletter is great. I read your newsletter all the time. Read it today. So it added a question to what we've got here. And what is the mindset that you've had that has helped you to develop your career to the level it's at? What's helped you?
Well, there's probably a lot of things, I suppose, that have helped me. I think maybe the thing that comes to my mind as you ask the question, Sabrina, is that I believe I'm doing the work I was put on the planet to do. And I think that not everyone can say that, and I feel blessed that I can say that. I think that has something to do with my ability to continue to want to do it, I suppose. And, I've been blessed in so many ways in life. That's certainly one. My upbringing was one that taught me the value of working hard, but also working smart and understanding how to take care of customers, which has also certainly served me well over the last 30-some years.
Wow. And when you say working smart, what do you mean by that? Can you?
Well, there are a lot of people. I'll put it this way. There's a lot of people that say, well, I'm busy. And I think of busy. My grandmother would not have agreed with this. But I think busy is the most dangerous 4-letter word in the English language, because busy just means I'm active. I'm doing stuff. And hard work is often associated with a lot of hours. Right. And I'm not afraid of working a lot of hours, but I really would like to be doing things in a way that's creating the greater productivity. And so working smart to me is being wise about how I use my time. It's about being wise about trying to understand what clients need, so the things that we're doing are the things that are going to best serve them and meet our purpose. So that's what I would say about the difference between working hard and working smart.
That makes sense. I remember years ago sitting at my desk thinking, I'm working so hard, it must be really important. And it was like, that's silly. Working hard is not what it's all about. Good point.
A lot of people, I think that, if you're a leader inside of an organization, and a lot of us think that, if I work hard, it will show up and people will notice. And I would simply say, maybe but working smarter and being willing to say no as well as being willing to say yes. Being willing to say no, not just simply because you don't want to, but saying no to something so you can say yes to something more important is a more valuable thing to think about. And a lot of us, and I'm not a woman, obviously, but I certainly know that as hard as it is for me to say no, I know that sometimes it's harder for women to feel like they can say no. And I would just encourage you to do that, because saying no to something is allowing you to say yes to something else that might be more valuable to the organization, to your team, for yourself.
Yeah. And I also feel better asking somebody something if I know they'll say no if they don't want to do it. I don't want
because then we sometimes feel like, well, they'll just do whatever I ask for, which may not really even be the best for all of us, right?
Right. Well, I want to get into this great book, which I read. It's around here somewhere.
Right here.
It's right here.
There you go.
We both have a copy of it. It's a wonderful book. It's Flexible Leadership, Navigating Uncertainty and Leading with Confidence. And I wonder if you could start out by giving us an example of an inflexible leader or a situation.
I think everybody on this, listening to these words, have experienced an inflexible leader. It's often easier to see in others than ourselves, because we think of ourselves, well, I'm just being consistent, right? But we look at someone else and we can see inflexibility. And I think it simply comes down to people that are so locked into their how, right? They're not going to change their how. This is how I do it. And the most classic and most prevalent case of an inflexible leader is someone who is saying things like, well, that's just how I lead. They're going to have to just get used to it because this is how I do it. And that typically ends up being really hard to overcome, because that's our identity, right? We've now said we've not said it consciously, but subconsciously we've said, this is how I lead. This is the kind of leader I am. And if the word that follows that isn't flexible, then I would say you're most likely inflexible, because you have now locked in not just to a habit, to an identity, which makes it really challenging for us to overcome that.
Really makes sense. What does it mean to be a flexible leader? How would I know if I'm a flexible leader or I'm an inflexible leader?
Well, I think it starts with, do we recognize that there's value in being flexible? And I think it's about, let's start with what being a flexible leader means. Okay. It means that we can, and I believe should, be consistent in our what and in our why. Like in our principles, in our values, in our mission, in our purpose. Like a mature tree is rooted in the ground, we should be rooted in those things. But like a mature tree, it's also flexible. I'm looking out the window at a tree right now. It's probably as old as I am, and it's blowing in the breeze. Mm-hmm. So it is both consistent and flexible. So a flexible leader is someone who is willing to adjust how they lead, how they communicate, how they decide, based on the situation or context that they see. And this isn't in the book, Sabrina, but here's how because I wasn't smart enough to have this figured out before I wrote the book, but here's how I would say it.
Okay.
If you're the kind of person, I'll start here. Everyone listening has had this moment when you are thinking about a situation as a leader, or someone comes into your office with a question, and as a leader, you think or say, it depends. If you're a flexible leader, or in that moment, if you then thought, well, what does it depend on? And we're willing to adjust based on your answer to that question, at least in that moment, you were a flexible leader. Because being a flexible leader is saying, I'm going to be intentional about getting past my habits and auto responses to consider the context of the situation, what it depends on, and then acting based on that, which might or might not be that thing that I would have normally done.
Yeah,
So being flexible doesn't mean I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just really like that. It just depends. I was thinking when we started out that if my husband says, "Hey, would you like to go do X?" My default response is no. That's and because I know myself so well, what I say is I say no, and then I go, "Wait a second." That's what I always say. Let me think about this. But I like it just depends because that
It does
gives me
depend
a chance
because
to really think about is it going to work or not?
I mean, I just met your husband on the screen a second ago.
Right.
So I would say that knowing your natural response is actually useful.
It is.
But acting on it always or always starting there is not useful. It's not always useful, right?
No.
So if you were to stop and say, well, tell me more about what this thing is that you're suggesting. And then from that, you might say, you know what? That sounds pretty good. Or I know that's important to him. So I'm going to say yes, even though I might personally have just said no. Anytime that you're willing to consider it and then think about it from a broader perspective, and that thinking about it doesn't have to mean overnight 3 days. It might mean just long enough to stop yourself from your auto response, right?
Yes.
That's the starting point of flexibility. Flexibility means that you're not thinking about the world as either or, but both and. How can both of these things be true? If both of these things are true, if I can not want to do it and yet am willing to consider doing it, I'm looking at the world from the word and. And ultimately, it's very difficult to be flexible when everything has to be either or, black or white, because we're going to pick. And we're likely going to pick the thing we're most comfortable with, most used to, most commonly have done.
And we're going to miss a lot of opportunities.
Well, and in your example, we might miss a lot of opportunities. As a leader, we might miss a lot of opportunities because our natural approach might not serve the situation best.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense. So how do you develop this? Does it have to do with confidence? How do you develop this mindset where you're going into it just depends and what's going to help us to do that?
Well, I think first of all, you have to decide for yourself as a leader that the way you've always done it won't always serve you. Like if you don't have enough dissatisfaction with the current state, you won't make the change, right? And I love that you start by asking about mindset. That's where I start in the book, because regardless of your mindset, I can teach you some stuff about being flexible. But if the mindset doesn't match, if you don't have an intention to flex, it's not going to matter, right? So number one is you have to decide that the way I've always led probably isn't going to always serve me best. And I think that it doesn't take very long for us to figure out that that's true. Now, not everyone then will say, okay, well, I'm going to do something about it. But that's the first thing. And then it comes down to what I just said. It's this thinking about the world in the frame of both and rather than either or. That two things can be true. And we have to be able to hold both of those in our head at the same time and then decide where between them, in the tension between them, do we need to go. So that's the mindset piece that comes first. Do I want to be a more effective leader? And if I do I have to recognize that the way I've always done it probably won't always serve me?
It seems like
then see the world.
A lot of confidence because you won't know the answers in the and that you would have in the this is the way I always did it.
But see, here's the false confidence that comes from it. Well, I know how to do it because I've always done it that way. Right. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to get a great result. It just means I'm going to get a result, right? I'd rather have confidence in improving see, here's the thing about leadership. We lead for outcomes and others. None of that do we have control over. As a leader, we are in the influence business. And so what we want to be doing is think about how can we make choices that improve our odds of success. And we've got a much better shot at improving our odds if we look at the situation, the context, than if we just do what comes natural to us. Because doing what comes natural means like we're always rolling the same dice or the same die, right? And like maybe that's going to work 1 out of 6, right? And so what we really want to do is how can we improve our odds of success? And that means we have to consider options rather than just doing what comes natural.
Yeah, and it seems like it takes a lot of confidence to do that, and that maybe you can teach that. Like in the master classes that you do, there's a way you could teach people to be more comfortable with the and or.
Yeah, confidence grows. Confidence grows in large part when we have success at something, right? So if we have a starting level of confidence that just says, hey, I can figure things out, right? And then we try something and we learn something from trying it, then our confidence builds. So in the book, I talk about the confidence competence loop. And you can start either place. If you have a level of competence at something, that gives you more confidence. And if you start with some initial confidence and build and then try something, and competence grows, then confidence grows. So in wherever you start on the cycle, they can build on each other. So rather than saying I'm confident that I can make this decision myself the way I've done it the last 634 times, but rather say I have confidence that my team, that collectively we can make a better decision, or I am confident that if I ask them questions, I might have a better perspective to make a decision. All I have to have is that, right? To then go try it and see what we learn. Now, here's what we all know is that the decision I make independently might have gone well or might not have. The decision I make with the group, probably, even if it ends up being the same decision, because I've gotten reinforcement from them, probably the odds are higher now, right? And so all we're trying to do is to raise our odds of success, which means if we know that the things we're trying will help us improve our odds, that should raise our confidence too.
Well, that's a really good reason to do it for sure. Can you tell us about see if I can pronounce this, Cynefin?
The Cynefin. It rhymes with Kevin. The Cynefin framework.
Kevin. Okay.
It rhymes with Kevin. You'll never forget it now.
Okay, no.
So the Cynefin framework was created by a gentleman named Dave Snowden, and it's a framework that he has continued to evolve and continues to evolve. But at a moment in time is where I used it and use it in the book in a slightly different way than he's ever used it. It's used. What it is he calls it a sense-making framework. Which means it helps us make sense of the world that we're living in. So the example, Sabrina, that I like to use is imagine, everybody as you're listening or watching, imagine that I put you out in the wilderness, someplace, right? This isn't a reality show. This is just a thought experiment. I put you out in the wilderness by yourself, and I said to you, and I just said, I want you to get out of the wilderness, get back to civilization. What would be the first thing you would want? A map, right? Like some people, I've asked this question to groups, and sometimes people say, well, I want my phone. I've said, no cell service.
Yeah.
And so pretty quickly people say, well, I want water. Okay, fair. But ultimately, you need a map, right? You need a map that says, where am I now? And once I know where I'm at, I can decide how to move forward. And the Cynefin framework helps us do exactly that. There are 4 parts to the framework, sort of like, although not quite as simple as this, but sort of like there are 4 points on the compass, right? And so the framework sort of says that there are some situations that we're in that are clear. The model, the framework used to use the word simple, but it uses the word clear. And so the clear context at work is where we sort of know the cause and effects. We've probably been here before. We probably have a best practice. If we lean into the best practice, it's probably going to do pretty well for us. processes are set and are working. This is the way work used to be. Most of work used to be like this 15 years ago. Most of it was clear.
Mm-hmm.
And 50 years ago, it was way more of it was clear. And so much leadership thinking is based around how do I lead when the situation is, there's a whole lot of things that are known. And we just have to lead from that place, which is one of the reasons why so many people were brought up in sort of a command and control sort of approach, sort of a parental approach to leadership that says, I sort of know, so let's go this way. And when things are really clear, that's not completely bad. It's just that that's not the world we live in most of the time anymore, right? So the framework has three more components, and we probably don't have time to dive into all of it really deeply. But if you move up from clear, if you think about it as a block diagram, you move up, then you find the area of complicated. When the context is complicated, the answers might be all known, but they're not all known by one person. Where we need expertise, and maybe we can't get all of them, but we can probably get more information to help us get a clearer picture of what's going on, but it's not clear. It's complicated. The systems are still pretty ordered, just like when it's clear. Like if we can get enough info, we can probably make pretty informed decisions. Now, sometimes we don't have time to get all of that, but too often leaders just lean back into, well, it's clear, we're just going to make this call and go. The next part of the Cynefin framework, which I think is the most powerful one for the world we live in now, and that is when things are complex. And Snowden would say that when things are complex, they are no longer, the system is no longer ordered, but it's unordered. Think about it this way. You might be able to know how to make mayonnaise, but once you've made it, you can't take it back apart.
Right.
Like I could take this computer apart and someone smarter than me could put it back together and it would work. You are not going to deconstruct the mayonnaise. The world that we live in is much more like mayonnaise. There are all these components. We don't really know how they all fit together. And once they're like this, we can't just pull them apart and say, well, there's this, there's this. They're all interconnected, interwoven. And whatever we do, there will be dominoes that fall, some of them unintended. And so it requires us to test, to try, to pilot. Best practices are far from going to be helpful here because the context is such that the best practice is based on a set of conditions that don't all exist anymore. And then the fourth context is called chaos. And a lot of us will say, well, hey, I'm in chaos. And according to Snowden, we really aren't as often as we think. So what most people do, even if they don't know the model or the framework, is they end up saying, well, either things are completely clear or they're completely chaotic. But the number of times that we're in true chaos are not very many and aren't very long lasting. So if we think back, Sabrina, to the start of the pandemic, the start of send everybody home, that was chaos.
Right.
But not for a long time, just for a short time. And by the way, in the moment of chaos, we're also looking for a leader for someone to say, tell us where to go.
Yeah.
As my dad used to say, let's do something, even if it's wrong. Right? Having a bias for action in that moment is not a bad thing. But pretty quickly, the situation likely moves into more and more complexity, which is exactly what happened during COVID.
Well, that's so interesting. Thank you for tuning in. If you found value today, please subscribe and leave a review to help other leaders discover these insights. For weekly advancement strategies, subscribe to the Missing Link Leadership Link, my 5-minute newsletter delivering tactics top executives use to increase visibility and command respect in meetings. Find it at sabrinabrom.com/missing leadership link. Would you like to advance your career faster? Coaching with me will help. Contact me at sabrina@sabrinabrom.com about coaching or joining my exclusive Impact Executive Leadership Mastermind. Follow me on LinkedIn for daily leadership tips. Just search Sabrina Brahm, Executive Leadership Coach. Until next time, keep elevating your presence and advancing your career.
Thank you for joining your host, Sabrina Brahm, on another Women's Leadership Podcast. If you have questions or comments, you can email her at sabrina@sabrinabrahm.com. Since 1989, Sabrina and her team have helped hundreds of women managers, business leaders, and entrepreneurs with valuable trainings, articles, books, and executive coaching. For additional tips, interviews, and free access to Great Leaders Today mini course, visit www.womensleadershipsuccess.com.